Hey there, and welcome to Into the Terminal, episode 42. Today we're going to be talking about another workload you could run on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and that is file shares with Samba. All right, Nate, why don't you kick us off?
All right, so Samba, the first thing we're going to have to do, as always, is install the Samba packages, right? So we're gonna do that with DNF, of course, because this is RHEL, and that's what we do. There you go. All right, then once you've got it installed, of course, we have to enable it. So there's two services that need to be enabled. There's both the Samba daemon and the NetBIOS name server. So that's the NMB here as well. I don't think you need the commas and the parentheses. This is systemd. That's one of those things they told me was better about it. There you go. Look at that. All right. So now they should be enabled and started because you use the -- now option, right? Now there's also some security concerns here. We need to right. You want to make a directory. We also need to set up SE Linux and whatnot and the firewall. So there you go. Make a directory. Set the contexts to Samba share T. And then open the firewall.
No. Helps if you put a space in there.
Yep, you need a space. And another dash, I think.
Yeah, I think it's 2 dashes.
This is why we do it live, because it's fun.
Love breaking things on a Friday.
And of course, reload the firewall to make that change active.
You know, I can't tell you how many times I've gone in, made firewall changes, installed a service, done all the things except forgot to reload the configuration.
Yeah, right? Why isn't it working? All right, and then Samba is configured with this nice little handy config file, which basically we're going to define a share. So I'm going to go down basically to the end of the file, right? And we're not going to touch the rest of this stuff. If you were doing this in production, you may want to do things like turn on or off home directories, printers, things like that. The format here is basically you make a block here. The block is titled the name of the share. You tell it where the files get stored. And we're going to add guest only here, right? Make it basically a guest share or a public share.
Okay.
Okay. And then we just need to reload Samba.
And that's all that it takes to install Samba and to create a guest share. So now we can actually, in the mount directory, we can put test file. If I know how to. If I know how to type.
Shared. Yep, there you go.
Oh, shared. Duh.
Shared. There's a D.
Who wrote this episode guide?
I don't know. Me. I don't know. Somebody that wasn't you, obviously, because why would you get your own commands wrong, right?
Right. All right. So in the bottom half of the show, what we're going to do is we'll discuss how to interact with this file share. Maybe do a little bit more in the way of security permissions, because right now it's kind of open to everyone. And we'll discuss when you might actually use Samba. So let's go ahead and dive into the second half of the show. And if you're joining us live, feel free to put some comments in chat, as well as ask your questions, and we'll address them live on air.
Yeah.
All right, this is Into the Terminal, episode 42, File Shares with Samba. I am your host, Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, and joining me, since Scott is apparently 40,000 feet in the air, is Mr. Nate, our resident technical marketing manager. Welcome to Into the Terminal. You're kind of becoming a staple on the show.
Yeah, it seems that way, but I don't look like that guy on the slide. We're going to have to fix that for future episodes.
For what it's worth, I actually excuse me, put in a request for that today. So we'll have to get an updated headshot and so anyway,
I think I can have fun with that.
we could change your nameplate to say Scott, and you could say all kinds of crazy things and see what happens.
Yeah, right. Get me a wig. I'd have to shave though. I don't know if I'm willing to do that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Well, I mean, he's on a plane right now, so what could he do?
Yeah, right, right. Maybe watch the episode later and then give us grief. Anyway, we're here to talk about Samba, right?
Maybe. All right, so let's dive back in. We hinted at tightening down security permissions. So why don't we figure out what we can do to do that?
Right. So the first thing we did, of course, was we made a share. We made it pretty open. That's probably not the best way to create a share unless that is the purpose of the share, right? So we're going to show you how to turn off the guest access that we turned on at the beginning, right? So basically, in the share there, we've already got that open.
Although
The
before we start making changes, I might point out that you notice in the code block above, you
Mhm.
can actually set file permissions on the share directory. So I don't want to discount guest only access because if you have, say, an internal file share, something internal to your department or to your company, you can actually set up a sort of a read only directory,
Mhm.
and you'd want that guest access. Excuse me. Or even if you have like a public share, something that you want to produce some PDF documents or something and allow people to download those documents. So I don't want to just discount out of hand the guest access,
Absolutely.
but in this case, we want something a little bit more secure. We might have some documents that we want to be able to share and edit collaboratively, but we want to make sure that someone is who they say they are before we let them have access. So
Right.
didn't mean to cut you off, Nate, but figured that bit of context might be helpful.
No, no, that is definitely valid. There are reasons to have public accessible shares, whether they're read only or read write. You can, if you're very creative, even make something like a Dropbox share where you can put files in, but you can't read other people's files. Right? There's lots of crazy stuff you could do with Samba. Right? So what we're doing here is we're setting the guest access to no. Basically, we're turning off guest access now. Of course, what that means is without any other changes, nobody can access this share then, right?
It's secure that way.
It's secure if no one can access it. The most secure computer is the one that's locked in the closet without any power, right?
Right. Those are my favorite. Unfortunately, they don't tend to work well.
Right. So, right, what this means is we've got the share now, but nobody can actually access it. So the next thing we want to do, right, is make a user to access the share.
And who wrote this guide? Jeez.
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to follow though.
So I went ahead and used the regular Linux user add command to create a user named Samba user, and we gave them a shell of no login, so they won't have interactive access into the RHEL server itself. But we would be able to, but we can actually, as Nate will describe here in just a second, we'll actually be able to give them file access. So if you've got like a Linux workstation or even a Mac, you'd be able to, and probably a Windows machine as well. You would be able to you'd be able to interact with at least the file share part of our server without actually having the ability to log in interactively.
Right. So the important distinction here is that Samba will have a layer of permissions and user access on top of your normal file system, but the normal file system still has to have a user to map to, which is why we created a local user, right? We gave it no login so that it can't just log into the machine because there's no reason for this user to be able to log into the machine, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to tell Samba about the user and what its password is. So SMB password is the tool, just like the password utility would be in Linux. What you're telling it is to add the Samba user, and that has to match, right? That's got to match the local POSIX user. And you're giving it a password. Sure, it's a super secure password, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be anything less.
It's Nate smells one.
Just so I could never figure it out. Real
It's
secure.
revenge for last week when you were making fun of my hair.
I don't know what you're talking about, Eric. Your hair is wonderful.
So we've got a Samba user. We've disabled guest access. Let's see. So there's a utility that comes with the Samba package called test parm, and so we can actually run test parm.
I love chicken parm. Is that the same thing?
I don't think so, but I think chicken parm is much tastier than test parm.
Probably.
So what that does is, much like Nginx-T, which we talked about a couple of episodes ago, you can actually go in and validate your configuration. So it grabs the smb.conf file. Excuse me. Make sure that the service is working correctly. Wheat crypto, which we may want to work on someday. Notice that this is a standalone instance of Samba. And so if we hit enter here, it'll actually cat out that configuration file. Let me think here. Although I didn't think about a way to demonstrate that live on air, other than ta-da, it works.
Yeah, right. So we need to set up permissions, don't we, on the file system for the Samba user in that directory that
Yep.
that we created, correct?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Now, would we want to do that in /mount or /share, /mount/shared, or on the file itself?
So that would all depend on how you want to manage the share. I think the easiest and safest thing to do for a demo might be simply to go into the shared directory and at least give a read permission to the user we created for shared. Although I guess he would have read anyway because it's globally readable. So unless you want them to be able to write to it, I guess we don't have to change much at all for that, do we? Because we added them to Samba, which means Samba will know about them, and the file permissions already give them read access, which is probably good enough. Now, you should be able to test the share with something like SMB client, no?
I would think so.
So if you do an SMB client -L, I'm digging back in my history here in my memory, but -L will list shares, right? So
yep. So list and host. In fact, since it's localhost, we can probably just do SMB clients -L, and that should go to localhost. Oh, no.
Well, if you do -L space, and then we have to use sort of the CIFS notation, right?
Yeah.
I think it's //, and then you could just use the IP address or localhost or 127.
Let's see. I think that's right.
I think it uses / in Windows. In the Windows world, it uses backslashes, but of course, Bash doesn't like backslashes because those are escape characters. So Samba is kind enough to let us use / instead. Oh, we have to give it a user. It's trying to use root.
Yeah.
Hit Control-C, and then after the dash, or before the -L, put a -U, -U.
And what do we?
And then
SMB user.
SMB user, if that's what we called it, or was it Samba user?
I think it was SMB.
Oh, it was Samba user. I'm looking back at your notes. Do it live, folks.
Seriously,
it'll be fine.
Who wrote this? Samba user.
And then it should be whatever super secure password. There we go. Now we can see our share. Now, if you just do an SMB client and take off the -L, so the same thing with the -U, take off the -L. Well, hold on. Nope, you hit enter too soon. You got to listen to directions, Eric. Now do the //localhost /our share, and it should give you like an old school FTP-like interface. It doesn't like the network name.
It doesn't like the fact that I misspelled it.
Oh, that'll do it.
Oh, interesting. SMB client -U Samba user // localhost /our share.
I'm sort of baffled. Did we miss an argument, maybe? I don't think we did.
Bad network name. As you can tell, it's been a couple of years since I've worked with Samba. No, we don't want to give it an auth file. Yeah, that should work. Yeah, that should be right. SMB client / Let me try typing it again just to make sure I didn't fat finger something here. Is it a permissions issue?
I don't know.
Bad network name. Doesn't like.
We can certainly troubleshoot this on air if we really wanted to, but.
I hate to leave everyone hanging here. Let's see. Because we use localhost up here.
Try it with the IP, maybe. Try it with the actual 127.0.0.1. I don't know if it's going to care. If it's doing like a NetBIOS name resolution, it's not getting there.
Right. Interesting. And this is when you go to samba.org and look at their instructions live on air. There's lists.
That's the way to do it, right?
That's what we pride ourselves on here at Into the Terminal. You start out with a really easy task, and
walk yourself right into a difficult one.
Right. These are we're doing this on purpose, so you all can learn from our mistakes.
Oh, is it this simple? Hang on a sec here. Trying this myself on my own local NAS. SMB client has some like esoteric weirdness with its command line syntax.
Mm-hmm. And I think that may be where we're getting hung up here. I'm trying to see if... Is it really another backslash?
It might be another / at the end.
Oh,
require it.
Could be something crazy like that. Let's find out. Nope. Interesting. So while Nate is testing a couple of things, something to think about is when would you want to use Samba? And Samba kind of grew out of a need for multi-platform organizations. So folks that had Linux or Unix servers and also Windows servers. So the need for something that was kind of cross-platform and like, I don't remember if it was live on air if you said this beforehand, but Samba was kind of a pre-Dropbox file share. The great thing about Samba was the ability to integrate with Active Directory. So you can actually point to Active Directory servers, excuse me, for your authentication.
So we have the syntax right. I'm not sure why it's not working on our little Samba deployment here. There must be something wrong we're missing. On my test, it was exactly what we're doing here. It's SMB client -U, the username. You could define a work group, although we don't have one specified, I don't think.
Right.
Then / the IP or the name / share name, and it works. Let me try it without the last slash and see what happens. Nope, absolutely works for me. I don't know. It's probably something simple we're missing here.
I might look one other thing up. Have you come across Samba in the excuse me, in your sysadmin days?
Yeah, so in my last job, we actually we had Novell NetWare as our file sharing.
Hmm.
Anybody remember NetWare, right? And of course, NetWare went through some bad financial times, and in the when that was happening, we decided, okay, we need to get off of NetWare, but we didn't want to run Windows because we were a very, very heavy Linux shop. So we actually stood up a Samba 3 domain, which emulated a Windows NT domain. And then we had a several Samba file servers all on top of RHEL 6. It was quite the project, and it worked pretty darn well. We had a guy that basically spent months just designing how this thing would work. He made a whole bunch of custom logon scripts. We made it all as seamless as possible so that users logging in would get their drives mapped, and pretty crazy. I have a copy of the O'Reilly Samba book that he annotated. I call it the Half Blood Prince edition because it's like all the stuff that he found in the book that didn't work for us. He would take notes and whatever. When he retired, I became the Samba guy. So I inherited the book too, which was invaluable. I think I brought it with me when I left there.
That's awesome, and
I,
I love the Harry Potter reference.
yeah, yeah, it was pretty good. And it's exactly like it's exactly the same concept, right? The one with all the scribbles in the side margins and all that
Hmm.
stuff. So,
So I actually only used Samba once in production, and that was in 2011, which tells you why I'm having such a hard time troubleshooting this morning. So it was 2011, and excuse me, I was working for a mid-market company that had a home office and then several hundred remote locations.
hmm
And so when a purchase was made, it would come in through the home office and would get processed at our co-located data center, and then the purchasing system and all that would do what it needed to do. But the problem was that we had to then get a printed receipt back out to the storefront. And so we're trying all these third party solutions, and so being a new Linux systems administrator, and when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so we just tried this crazy idea of, let's set up like a Linux utility box and let's set up Samba, tie it into Active Directory, create a service account, and set up cups printing. So cups is the print service within Linux,
yep.
and we'll process that because the purchasing and payment applications were all on Linux. So we just stood up a Linux print server, tied it into Active Directory, and then all of a sudden the Windows terminals at all the remote locations could then print, and it was a disgusting solution. And the amount of things that could go wrong and break were just scary, but it worked.
Yeah, the Active Directory, or I should say the Windows NT domain that we had set up was, I mean, it was pretty solid. It ran for years, but I have to admit it was a little crazy to go in and even apply updates or whatever because you
Hmm.
didn't know if you were gonna, topple something. And the guy had retired, right? The guy who had designed it, so I can understand that, right? Um, so yeah, if you really wanted to dig into this, there's probably a log file in varlog, and that may give us something to go on.
Yep. So right
Yep,
there within
varlog
varlog,
samba.
there's a Samba directory.
Yep.
And
So the log SMBD would probably give you, if you just tail that, it's
let's.
considering we're the only one accessing it. I bet it'll give us something to go on. I
Yeah, I
hope.
was going to see if maybe there's something obvious that we were
Yeah,
missing.
if it doesn't, it could be an SE Linux thing. Maybe there's a boolean we have to toggle that we didn't think of.
Oop. Okay, so that's when I was trying to do something with mount share instead of shared. but I don't see.
Yeah.
Unless.
Ah. Is that all it is?
That's probably all it is. So, for those of you that might have missed it, in my configuration file, I had the wrong path, which makes me feel really stupid. So, systemctl. Let's restart Samba and NMB. And
Try
then let
Samba
me
client again.
find our Samba client command.
Super secret password.
Hey!
Hey, look at that. Just do a quick ls. Maybe we shouldn't. We'll just call it done. It's good. See, look, there's a prompt. It's obviously working.
Right. But lo and behold, there is our test file.txt. How
There
about
we
that? It only
go.
took us 10 minutes to realize that Eric doesn't know how to write
That's
episode
okay.
guides.
That's okay. All right, so awesome. Samba, you can do your own Windows-ish file sharing on your Linux box. Good stuff, right?
So now forgive me, I haven't used Windows heavily since like XP. No,
And why
7. It was
would you
probably
anyway,
7.
right?
It was so Windows 7 was probably the last time I used it heavily, especially in a work environment.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd be able to open up a Windows Explorer window, if it's still called that, and it's either Go or Connect or Remote Connect or something along those lines in one of the configuration windows, and you could actually input the server name and the share name. So
Yeah,
in this case, our share, and
you
connect to it, you'd
could.
get a prompt for your SMB username and password, and you would actually be able to access this directory on Windows or probably Mac, using that as a network file share. So
Apple did some funny stuff with their CIFS client, and I know there was some issue with Samba, but I think on Samba 4 that's resolved. But yes, on a
gotcha.
Windows machine or even a Fedora or a GNOME desktop, you can simply open up File Explorer and put in the path, and you can even map a network drive to it in Windows. So
Mhm.
you could have, the good old, you know, H drive or whatever you
Mhm.
store all of your home directory stuff on, right? So
Right.
yeah, it's a pretty powerful tool and it's very extensible. You can script just about anything. You can do pre and post mount scripts. You can do user
Mhm.
logon scripts. It's crazy. There's a lot you can do with it. It's very powerful.
A lot of times, Samba is used to create basically network based home directories. So if you've got 100 Windows servers and 100 Linux servers, you can set up Samba, and you can actually within the Linux configuration files, you can actually define that /home/your username isn't local; it's actually a remote file share. So
Yep.
that's a great way to, as a former sysadmin, to write a quick 6-line Bash script. And if you're trying to check for a vulnerability or something, write a quick Bash script and have it accessible anywhere that your home directory is created. One caveat I do remember on that was you actually have to log into each of those servers once to get the file share to be mapped. But
Hmm.
after that, you can log in, log out, and you basically have a network-based home directory.
Yep. Yep. And in fact, many home or even enterprise level NAS systems that offer Windows file shares are just Samba in the background.
Yep, very true. So, with that said, we're at the bottom of the hour here, and despite our best efforts, would like to say that Samba is fairly easy to get up and running. It is very straightforward in the configuration files. There's so much you can do with it, so much to try out. So definitely head out to lab.redhat.com. We've got a sandbox that you can try some of this out in. Or spin up a virtual machine in one of the cloud providers. It's a lot of fun to play with, and as we kind of started to show towards the end of the episode, you can lock down the security pretty well. So let me see here. I believe Scott's back with us next week, and we'll be covering a topic I'm really excited to hear about, and that's tweaking system performance with TuneD. So I think
Hmm.
RHEL 8, we started to create some TuneD profiles alongside our upstream partners, so you can get a little bit better performance just by changing a profile, whether it's a virtual machine or a laptop or whatever the case may be. So definitely join us a week from now. Excuse me. As you can tell, I'm kind of finally recovering. But join us next week for Tuned on Into the Terminal. Also, next Wednesday, we'll have an episode of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents, where we'll be talking about Red Hat Satellite and smart management and some of the things that are to come. So definitely like and share with a friend. And if you have any questions that we didn't cover today, feel free to put them in the comments below. Other than that, on behalf of Mr. Nate and myself and the entire Red Hat Enterprise Linux team, thank you for joining us for Into the Terminal, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good one, everybody.